when I think about there's, how many major leagues there are here in America, at least, at least four major leagues and then 30 teams in a league. And then how many legal departments are there? And I'm able to find myself, working with two professional sports teams right now. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests with Morgan and Akins, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of The Defense Never Rests. I'm your host, Megan Henry, and today I'm joined by Sam Burham, who is Associate Counsel for Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. So totally different from our normal guests with talking about claims and litigation and things like that. He deals with the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia 76ers and a lot of their transactional agreements and deals for, advertising and, everything that goes into putting on a sports event. So I'm super interested in what he has to talk about because it's so different from what I do on a day-by-day basis. And I kind of want to get an inside look on the sports world. So with that said, let's bring him in. Hi, Sam. Welcome to this episode of the Defense Never Rests. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Megan. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome.
So I'm excited because you can talk about something totally different than a lot of my guests in the sense that you work, in the sports arena. And for us on the outside, it seems like you just have a really cool job. And, for our listeners, can you just give us let us know or let them know what you do on a very brief scale, and we'll dig into it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Associate Counsel at Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, or as we call it, HBSC. HBSC is a sports and entertainment company that have a variety of different sports properties underneath it. So we have the Philadelphia 76ers, the New Jersey Devils, the Prudential Center. We have minor league, NBA, and NHL teams. We have an esports team. There's a venture fund, an innovation lab that works with startups. There's a real estate group. So it's a wide variety of sports and entertainment related properties. And so in the legal department, generally what we do is we provide legal support to all of those properties. And also, all the groups and marketing departments and everyone ticketing within those different properties as well. So, at a high level, that's kind of what we do in the legal department here.
I mean, in some, you kind of have the dream job that so many of my law school classmates really wanted.
Yeah, no, it was, I always kind of wanted to this was a field that I really wanted to get into. I played basketball myself at high school, college, and I actually played overseas before going to law school. And it was something I always really wanted to get into and was super passionate about, getting back into the sports industry. So when I had the opportunity, when this came up, I was I was super excited as well. It's something that I know. I speak to a lot of law students and other people as well, and it's to be able to work for a sports team and not just one, two. It's an awesome opportunity. Yeah.
So, all right. So you just kind of glossed over that. So then you played basketball overseas. So you played professional basketball.
Yeah. I played in Australia for a couple of years before law school, actually. And so, high school, college, and then overseas before law school. And there came a time where I had to sort of make a decision whether I was going to keep playing or maybe do something a little different. It was a really tough decision that I had to make at that time. But there was for a few reasons, it just, it made sense if I wanted to pursue something, and law had always been something that had been kind of discussed. My dad started law school and then went to do something very different and make television. My mom graduated from law school, but she never practiced. So it was always an option. And I really wanted, like I said, to find a way to get back to sports. And so I thought going to law school, pursuing a career in the sports and entertainment industry would be a way where I can, make sports part of my life going forward if the opportunity came along, which it did, lucky enough for me. So that was sort of the genesis around how it all came about. And I ended up, going to law school and then, finding my way to an opportunity in an area I'm really passionate about.
So that's really interesting because a lot of times I have on guests that, their parents, they're like mom or dad was a litigator. And so they kind of followed that path or, this is the first I've heard that, your parents were lawyers, but they actually weren't practicing lawyers.
No, my dad, I think my dad probably did half. So I grew up in Australia originally, actually. So this is back there, but my dad did, I think, I'm not sure how, 1 year, less than a year. And then he decided to make television, actually, is what he does now. And my mom he graduated from law school, but then went on to work with a bunch of nonprofit companies and get into communication. So I guess the value of it as an experience and an education was something that was there, even though they never practiced. So.
Yeah. Well, but that's also, I mean, it was probably helpful to go into law school knowing that, you already knew you had a wide base and you weren't, a lot of people I think go and be like, okay, I want to get the top 10% so I can go
Yeah.
work at, this big law, or, they had this certain idea in mind. Whereas you probably went in with more open mind that, you were going to gain tools to utilize it in a way.
I think that's right. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think the way we were I was looking at it, and obviously in discussions with, the family around whether it was a good option or not, was that at the very least, it's going to provide you with like a set of tools and skills that you'll be able to translate, whether it's practicing, law forever or taking these skills and applying them to something else. I think was really how we did look at it when I was going into it. I wasn't, I'm going to be litigated for the next 30 years or something like that. It kind of was a building block to something, that take me somewhere, I guess. Yeah.
So while you were in law school, did you already have this mindset that you wanted to get into the sports industry at that point, or did that evolve later?
I think it's a bit of both. I think when I went to law school, I think it's a bit of both, because you find out how hard it is as you get in there. But I think when I started, it was definitely, I knew I wanted to hopefully find my way back to the sports industry. When I was in law school, I was a research assistant for the sports law professor there, Professor Jeremy Duru, who's just, one of the best. And I still, know and talk to him today, talk to him a lot. And I can remember before my 1L summer, sitting down and having a conversation with Professor Duru about what my internship was going to be, whether it was going to be taking something different, but outside of the sports industry, or, working with him and starting to understand the type of issues that come up in the sports and entertainment industry. And just, not on a practical level that I probably deal with now, but more of a legal writing and researching and writing about certain issues, and forming a relationship with him. And he knew this was something I was interested in. He didn't, he let me decide for myself, but he definitely provided some guidance about what he thought might be the way to go. But I worked with him that summer, and then I worked with him throughout law school. And so it was something I knew I wanted to do. And then I was hoping to find my way back to it. It is tough. I think I talk to students too now, and there's, a couple of routes I think you can take to find your way into the industry. There's some people that go straight out of law school, or there's other people, like me, that might practice for a few years and then sort of transition over.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely an extremely difficult industry to break into. And I knew not so many people. I knew a lot of people in law school, and that's what they wanted to do. And I probably was one of them at some point too, just because it has a glamorous, like, it's cool,
Yeah.
And I'm sure,
it's different. At the very least, it's different than what other people do. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not. And I want to get into it too, because I'm sure it's not as cool as we all think it is. But on the outside, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like with all these, with any job, really, right? There's things that are really exciting about it, and there's other, administrative type of stuff that everyone sort of has to deal with. But it is great. And I was lucky enough, Professor Duru taught me at American, and then someone I report to now mainly, Dave Reed, my professor taught him at Temple. And so that's how they were hiring to fill a position at HBSE, that someone was transitioning internally. And so that's how I, lucky enough, it's definitely a industry, I think. And so, that's how I ended up being part of the interview process at HBSE. Yeah.
And I mean, that's such an important point too, for like anyone who's listening that maybe in law school, is making those connections while you're there. It's something I did not do a good job at.
Mm-hmm.
But like getting close with professors or administrators or anyone there that can help, you can start building your network early, is so important. And it's definitely something I missed the buck on a little bit, I think, and I had to do it later.
Yeah.
But you just never know where it's going to lead you. And not that you need to make relationships just to lead you somewhere, but making those meaningful relationships can help you down the road.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's something I am still not good at today, but trying to always get better at. I'm always, trying to, do better with networking. It's something, during law school, I wasn't, great at either. But that's definitely, I tell that to when students talk to me as well. Building your network from an early age is one of the most important things you can do. And I always tell students as well, there's the easiest way to do this which is what I was told too, is there's the Sports Lawyers Association. Joining groups like that provide a great opportunity to start building from the ground up and really try to build your network. But no, you're exactly right that it's so important. And yeah, I'm still trying to get better at it today for sure.
I know. I had a friend during college who was extremely good at it, and college, I'm like, what is she doing? Like, what? And now she works for a very large streaming company that everyone definitely knows.
Yeah.
And so I think her networking did very well for her. She was on something.
I think, like you said, you never really know what might come of it. For me, it was, when I started working with Professor DeRue, it was because I was really passionate and interested in it. And I was, hopeful, one day it might help me, find my way to my career now. But yeah, you just never know what could happen. You kind of have to take advantage of every opportunity, especially like you said, for sports and entertainment, maybe more than others. It's definitely a who kind of industry for sure.
And do you think that, and maybe this is just an obvious question, but your background, in basketball, does that give you like kind of an edge on your side of the industry because you understand both sides of the game?
I think it's interesting, right? Because when it comes to sports law, there's not really, we are lawyers, right? We're all lawyers. The practice is lawyers, and sports law itself is just a mismatch of other varieties of law in the sports subject matter. And so first things first, you have to, practice and be good at what you do. But at the same time, it definitely does not hurt. You know what I mean? It shows at the very least that I have an interest in it and I'm passionate about it. And it's something that's been a part of my life, for many years. So it's a hurdle that I don't have to go in there and convince anyone that, hey, this is something I really understand and want to learn more about and want part of my life, because it is something that always has been from a young age and playing a lot. So yeah, no, it definitely helps me, stand out from the crowd and for sure on that side of the industry. But at the same time, there are, it's not like they're just going to hire you because of that, it definitely helps though, for sure.
But, and I think you and I spoke about this before, but you don't deal directly with players.
No, not exactly. So what we do is the way I sort of describe it is there's mainly like two verticals. It's like the team operations and the business operations. And so on the team operations side, that's mainly where a lot of the player interaction is. And we do work with the basketball operations department and the hockey operations department, but ourselves, a lot of our work is focused on the business ops side of things. But yeah, you're right. So our day-to-day doesn't so much involve interactions with players. It may involve interactions with management on both the ops, the basketball and hockey ops side, but yeah, not exactly players. Yeah.
But it has to, even though you don't have direct interaction with the players, having been a player in that setting yourself, you must have a better understanding though, how, certain decisions that come down on and with management and management changes do have a direct effect on the player. So you can kind of, I think in a way you have a good eye on the inside because you know how these things trickle down and what effect it could have.
It's definitely, it's definitely helpful in understanding the industry for sure. A big impact on our business comes from the management of the basketball operations and the hockey operations and how those departments operate and manage within them. So, playing it and being a fan of it before that, it definitely, how the process works, and just how the industry works in a whole, I think just gives you do have a little bit more insight and understanding. It's not so much the foreign language to you when you're dealing with these things and hearing about them. So I think it definitely helps just as a general base for it, for sure.
So, but does it change your perspective a little bit, like now that you know how the sausage is made, like, does it change your perspective? Like being able to, sit down and watch like your favorite team on, any given day, like it
I
might
think
change
it's
it a little bit.
yeah, I think it's actually really funny. So when I started at HBSC, I had I got NHL TV, so I could watch the Devils, and I got NBA League Pass, so I could watch the Sixers and watch all the games. And it's when you're there, one of the main reasons why I wanted this job was so interesting is because you got to see how everything worked. And I think just from where I was before, the industry is a little bit of a black box and trying to figure out what goes on behind the closed doors there. And I'm sure a lot of industries are like that. I feel like this one was, for me at least, a lot, just not having not much visibility to it. And so now you get to see exactly what goes into putting on a game in front of 20,000 people. And there's so many different things that go into it. Even what goes into a simple promotion that you see online for like a contest or a sweepstakes or something, there's so many different things going into it. So I think at the very least, you appreciate it a lot more when you sit there. And I know now I'm sitting there watching a game and I'm going to start talking about, oh, that's the virtual signage, or that's like, oh, that's the court side. And I'm like, I'm looking at all the different types of advertising and stuff. So you definitely see it. You definitely see it from a different perspective. And so it's different. You look at it differently once you see all the stuff that goes into it. But you appreciate it more, and you're so close to it all the time as well. I mean, in the Prudential Center, I was initially based up in Newark at the Prudential Center, and now based out of Philly. But at the Prudential Center, our offices are at the Prudential Center. So every day you're walking to the arena, through past the rink, and you're right there, and you're so close to it that it's hard to not kind of have a different view of what goes into putting on a game. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think I jumped over to that, but really, like, no one has a typical day. I don't have a typical day. You don't have a typical day, but a lot of our listeners and even myself, we don't even totally understand what it is that you do. Like, we just think it looks cool and
Yeah.
it sounds cool. And your office was in the Prudential Center. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I can get into it for sure. So a lot of this, one big part of the work that I specifically do is dealing with sponsorship agreements. So we have companies out there that want to partner with the team, and so they pay us a fee. In exchange for that, they get to use our trademarks and logos as part of their advertising, which I'm sure everyone sees on TV everywhere, and on social media. And we also provide them certain benefits. And these agreements can range from on-court branding. If you see a logo on the court or on the ice, courtside LED, so it's on, there's value to something that, it's TV visible or not TV visible. So there's all different types of benefits that we provide our partners. And so negotiating those contracts is one of the biggest things that we do. And so, whoever the partner is, what commercial entity it is, us in-house, we handle all that work. And then we, draft and negotiate those contracts with the companies, in-house or outside counsel. So that's a big part of what we do. We have the events business at Prudential. So when we host events at the Prudential Center, for instance, we're hosting college basketball tournaments, later on in the year. There's a lot of contracts that go into that with the schools, with the vendors, with other partners that are putting it on. That's another part of what we do. Like I said, working with team operations departments, there might be things around trades, coaching agreements, employment agreements, and interpreting. Also, we interpret NHL and NBA rules kind of on a daily basis as well. But that's sort of like the high level. But at the same time, like I said at the beginning, there's so many different properties that we work with. So we also, we'll be working with marketing, and there might be IP issues we need to deal with. We're working with the esports team. There might be issues with them. There is litigation that comes up as well. And so there's always a variety of different areas that we have to operate in. I think the easiest way that I try and, think about it is that, we support mainly the business operations. And so anything that goes into running the business, we have a hand in. Which is great experience for me because we literally see everything. Like, someone in our legal department has a hand in nearly everything that happens there. Yeah.
Yeah. What if, or what about the circumstances that, you have certain licensing agreements with, the teams and the players, and then say there's like a rogue player who does something totally like off brand, or put something on that they're wearing something that's off brand. I mean, that must set off lots of legal alarms.
Yeah, I think that any issue like that certainly affects the company, that flows through certain members of the team here, whether it's the GC or whether it's something that flows down. But there's certainly been times where your players or the team have been associated with certain things that the legal department will get involved in as well. So depends how high level it is based on who will be involved in. But yeah, for sure, if something comes up that affects the that affects the team. Even if it's just, from a PR perspective, I know there's, members of our team will be involved in conversations, if it's at a high level as well, even with ownership or CEOs or management about how it should be handled, as more of an advice, perspective, but also from a legal perspective as well.
So I wanted to back up real quick though, because you didn't just start here in this position though. Like, how did you pave your path after law school
Yeah.
to get where you are?
Yeah, sure. So I was at Deckert, working at Deckert in Washington, D.C., in their corporate securities practice group. So we're doing capital markets, M&A work, general corporate governance type of work, a wide variety of different transactional law type of stuff. So I was at Deckert for 4 years in D.C. And everyone at Deckert was great. Working there, the people were great. There's people there that I still would see as mentors to today. But after being there for 4 years, I thought I had really developed a good set of skills that I would be able to transition. I think it can be really tricky for someone to go in-house that hasn't had the experience of going through a firm. And that's not to say you can't do it. I know people that have done it and worked with people that have done that. I just think it does get a bit tricky because, the firms you work a lot, but it's a really good training ground for learning skills, especially when it comes on, I'm sure it's on the litigation side as well, but the amount of contracts I saw in my time there and the type of deals I was working on, large scale, multi-million dollar, huge deals that you're working on at a high level with demanding people. It just provides you with a really good training ground to develop these skills. And I was lucky enough to be working with some people that were great teachers there and working with other great associates. But, after being there for 4 years, I was ready for something probably a little different. And it's hard. I think a lot of people, and I definitely, suffered from this, but when you're working a lot and you have your head down, it's hard to kind of look up and see what else is out there. So I think for most of my time there, I was sort of just working away and trying to learn. And if something came along, it would be, great. It's funny how things work though, is that right around that time after my 4th year was when I was really starting to probably think about, being able to lift my head up a little bit and maybe see what else may be on the future. And that's when this opportunity came up from, like I said, my professor reached out to me and he knew they were looking, and I was able to find myself to get into the interview process, near the end, and then started HBSC. I was at Deckert for 4 years doing mainly transactional.
And I mean, and the bulk of your job is transactional. It is a likely, not a likely transition, but it makes sense as a transition into what you're doing now. Like,
yeah, it does for sure. There's definitely the skills certainly translate. I think, the skills definitely translate across for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I think everything always goes back to litigation, because why do we write contracts? Why do we review contracts? Why do we comb through them with a red pen? Is to prevent litigation, or in litigation get, hopefully that we end up on top. So litigation is always probably in somewhere in your mind, whether or not 100%. You might be litigating it or not.
Yeah, 100%.
So even though, like, I think a lot of it is you're still trying to minimize risk for your client in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's 100% right. So when we're drafting these contracts, it's, risk allocation and risk mitigation is pretty much a lot of it. We definitely need to make sure the business deal terms are outlined correctly, but I think a lot of the trigger points that people or transactional lawyers and litigators or commercial litigators are used to seeing are probably the same contract trigger points that you would normally deal with. It's just we're focusing on them now in a different sort of subject matter. So, it's really important about payment terms and when we're going to get paid. Termination rights are really important to make sure, when someone can get out of a contract. Indemnification, what we're going to be, compensated for. But then there's certain things also so those are all the kind of, the reps and warranties, all that general stuff. I definitely, when I learned at Deckert and what any kind of other transactional attorney would be able to transition across, which is what was helpful. I think a lot of my work is drafting. But for sure, there's stuff that's sports and entertainment specific. For us, we provide benefits to certain, partners, and how you describe that benefit, how you describe the courtside signage, how you describe the jersey patch, how you describe the promotion. That's something that is definitely really important as well, because we need to be really specific with what we're saying, like you said, to make sure to avoid like any kind of dispute, we want to make sure that in the contract we really are clear with what we're providing and laying out for our partners. And so that's something that's different. I think for sure. Something that was more one-off, I would say, that now, due to COVID is more prevalent is what we call make goods or substitute benefits. So something that's really big now is, just say there was an in-arena fan promotion, but now there's no fans. So how does that work? And so there was mechanics in every contract around how you work out if we can't provide something. But this was something that, I've been here for a couple of years now, but this was something, before was more of a one-off situation where maybe we couldn't provide something. Whereas now you have entire contracts that you can't deliver on all these things or you have to come up with alternative ways to deliver these benefits, because now it's a completely different landscape. And so I still remember after, I think it was, so like Rudy Gobert on March 12th, the NBA player got COVID, and then the NBA shut down, and then the NHL shut down, and everyone started shutting down. And I remember having a legal call, the end of that week or something, I think on Friday, about reviewing nearly every contract to see what these provisions were like, because it's going to come up with every single partner. So those are the kind of things that now are probably more prevalent than they used to be. Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it was one of the things I was thinking about asking you is, when all the shutdowns happened with sports, did you have that moment of panic? Shit, am I going to be out of a job? Or you're like, no, there's going to be plenty for me to do?
I think for us, I mean, as it goes both ways, but for us, it was, we are so ingrained in part of the company that we have been busy since we've been busier during COVID. I think the way I describe it, and probably for a lot of lawyers, it was nearly like a second job for us. We have the business operations, and then we had dealing with everything that was COVID related. So I think we knew as a legal department that we were definitely conscious of the effect it was having on our business. But as a legal department, luckily enough for us, we were necessary. We needed to be there as especially during that time. So I think we felt confident that we were still providing value to the business, and that it was something that was, nearly now more than ever necessary for us to be a part of. But you can't hide the effect that it had on the sports and entertainment industry.
It was expendable at that time because the waters were all new, and businesses needed people to be able to read through everything and figure it out.
The amount of new issues, I think it's crazy when you talk about a typical day, and everything, and there's always new issues just during the business, but things that we had never really thought about, or thought about maybe theoretically or as something that wasn't really a real risk, is all of a sudden very real. And you're looking at hundreds of contracts and hundreds of provisions, and people are negotiating these provisions harder, now than ever before when it comes to make goods and force majeures and things like that. So the effect on us is, we were there, and we were ready to go, and we have a great team here. So we knew we'd be needed. So.
Well, and also you have all these new provisions that haven't been tested yet in court. So a lot of times you have provisions and contracts, like this is going to hold up. I know the precedent before it, it's going to be fine. But when you're writing these, you have a whole new area that you need to address, and you think you're writing the provisions in the best way, but you just don't know yet because it hasn't been challenged.
Yeah, so I think it's hard, when you're talking about the risk mitigation earlier as well, we're trying to anticipate all these different variables that may impact a contract. We're now thinking mainly, I don't know, maybe now we're thinking even broader than we were before. Stuff that is only once in theoretical. We're thinking, okay, maybe we do need to try and address that in the third line of the force majeure section or something like that. We're digging a little deeper and giving you just a new lens on how you're looking at all this stuff, I think.
Yeah. And also what I go back to is, you were talking about the Prudential Center and how you also manage the actual buildings. And so there's even more provisions you have to put into place as to opening up your arena now.
Yeah.
First it was no fans, and then it's limited fans. And I don't know what Prudential Center is now, but I think most of them are back to
I think it was, it's definitely tough. So with respect to the COVID protocols, we take a lot of our lead from the leagues and definitely the state governments and the federal governments and the CDC. So, we operate in two leagues. We have the NHL and the NBA, and then we operate in two states. So we
Yeah.
have Pennsylvania, we have New Jersey. And so there's a lot of different things to keep track of. So a lot of the role of us in the legal department and our government affairs group was making sure we were trying to stay on top of all of that. And you're right, it's definitely changed over time with how many fans were, no fans to some fans to, capacity slowly increased to where it is now. And I think it's, our whole goal obviously is to keep the fans safe and keep the players safe and be able to put on an event. But having the concerts there in connection, in addition to the games at Prudential Center, it's the live event business was just hit really hard, all around during the pandemic, and it's starting to come back, like you said, and recovering. And so we're really excited now to do what we can and operate within the protocols and guidelines to start having these events again, which is really exciting for us now too, as well, and for the fans to have everyone come back.
And I mean, it is a business too. I mean, you have food vendors and you have, like clothing vendors, and you have all these people depending on fans coming in and purchasing goods or food or drink and everything. And when all that's in flux, it's really hard to, it's a business. You're there to make money.
100%. And there's no one's really, no one's hiding the ball on that either. I think ticket revenue is one of the biggest revenue generators for us. And when you have, a season and a half or whatever it was with no fans, it's challenging for everyone. And it definitely funnels down to, there's people that rely, people that work concession stands and guest services and ushers, and there's full-time employees and part-time employees. And, it really does affect everyone. And I think we were, as a company, really conscious of that and making sure we could do what we can to take care of as many people as possible.
Now, with with the management of Prudential Center or other other venues, taking COVID out of it, in addition to your job doing mostly transactional, you're gonna have trip and falls, fist fights, like you're gonna have
100. That's and that's part of my it has been during my time here, part of my responsibilities as well, dealing with that. And complaints come in and they funnel up. We have the trip and falls, and we have altercations and disputes, and that comes up all the time, and we get a lot of them. And so we handle those. We initially handle the intake of those, and then work with outside counsel as well to help us manage that process too. But there's definitely litigation, and for someone that had a purely transactional background, it was a bit of a learning curve coming in. We're fortunately now had another great member of our team join, Esther, who was from the DA's office, I think, in the Manhattan DA's office, I think, where she came from before this. So she's a little bit more experienced with me than that. But for me, coming from a transactional background, it was a learning curve for sure. But
for myself, with the litigation background, I've had many interesting cases involving concerts and concert venues, because a lot of times they not only sue, like say there's a fist fight or something, they not only sue the person throwing the punch, but they often sue the entertainer for enraging the the crowd.
I'm not sure I've seen that yet. And I have seen, we have a lot of entities, so I've seen a complaint with a long list of HVAC entities on it. But they're all, it's it's unfortunate that it happens for sure, but it's definitely something we deal with, and a lot of interesting stories for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you have that many people coming in through the door, it's inevitable. But it also, on your side, when you have the litigation come across your desk, it not only can, it probably shakes things up for you, but sometimes the fact scenarios can be, lighten your day a little bit.
No, I was gonna say the things that come up are, I mean, we try and we try and prevent any risk that we can with people coming into the arena, and these things, like you said, still happen. There are things that you would never even contemplate. So it's a bit, we do the best we can. But you're right that the fact scenarios can be a bit interesting.
Yeah. I mean, as we always say, just because an accident happened does not mean there's negligence. So
no, that's 100% right.
So, in your role, like, I know what keeps me up at night a lot of times. It's the fear of missing a deadline, or something falling off the radar or falling off my to-do list. In your world, what keeps you up at night?
I think, for me personally, I'm lucky in the sense that there's not too many things that keep me personally up at night. I think work related, I think we have such a great team here that for me, one of the things is, so we have 6 people as part of our legal team here that work across all the industries, and everyone has different backgrounds and experiences and been there for different amounts of time. So, the thing about being in-house that was a transition from being at a firm is that the work never stops, the business keeps running. And then because the business keeps running, there's contracts, there's issues, there's questions that keep coming up. So one of the senses similar to what you were saying about, deadlines and prioritizing and making sure we're keeping a handle on the work. Like that's definitely something that is on your mind to make sure that we're giving everything back because if we don't, the business can, in a sense, get stuck if we're not turning things over fast enough because everything needs to come through us. So that's definitely something we're super conscious of and making sure we're meeting and prioritizing and meeting deadlines. But because we have such a great team here, those keep you up at night type questions, we really do our best to ask, run everything down and as much as possible before we move forward. And so yeah, either whether it's to the people directly above me or above them, we really try and do a good job of being really collaborative and working together, which is great.
Now, did you have a difficult time transitioning from the firm model to the in-house model? Because I've talked, and I recently asked, I've talked to other people about this, and some people I've talked to have had a difficult time because, like, well, at a firm, you always know you're paying your way, so to speak. Like your worth is there because you're billing your hours, and as long as you're doing that, you're good. But at in-house, you're no longer doing that, so the mindset's a little bit different. So did you have a harder time transitioning with that, or was it you're like, see a billable hour, I'm good without you?
I think the billable hour is it's a necessary evil, I guess, on the law firm side of things. I was happy to not have to bill in tenths of an hour anymore. I think as most people are when they switch in-house, but it definitely is a change and a transition from. I think one of the biggest things is when you're at a firm, you're always dealing with legal colleagues, whether it's other lawyers internally, or you mainly, you might be with the GC, or you might be with other people in the legal department. So you're always having conversations with other legal, other people with a legal background. When you switch in-house, now you're dealing with a lot more business folks, which is awesome because I'm really interested in that. So, it gives you a taste of what kind of goes into it, and you get to see a lot more different areas. But at the same time, not interacting with lawyers all the time can be a bit tricky, and just be able to make sure I think it makes you as a lawyer have to be, maybe in a sense better, that you really have to be succinct and concise about really knowing and understanding what you're asking and the questions you're asking, which when you switch industries, mainly even more so than switching from, in-house, from firm to in-house, but switching to a different industry and needing to learn a new set of terminology, needing to know what, all these different people in the company do. I know I've talked about that with other people in my group, but there's a lot of people at HBS that do a lot of different things, and, all play a vital role in, putting on the production of a game or a concert. But you really need to learn what those people do and who to ask the right questions to, what things mean. And so I think that was one of the biggest transitions for me, was just getting more familiar with the company, and it takes time. But that was one of the biggest transitions, is working more with those business folks and being able to explain issues. It was definitely a bit of a transition, but it gets easier over time, obviously, as you form relationships and have a better understanding of who does what.
Well, and sure, because you can't explain things in, legalese all the time. You have to explain it to someone who's not a lawyer so they understand it. Just like, like my husband's an accountant. If he tries to explain to me accounting in accounting terms, like, you might as well talk in another language. Like, it just doesn't work for me.
And I think too, right, as lawyers, we're trained, during law school to kind of think a certain way, and that allows us to do our jobs, but it can be a little foreign, I think, to others, and maybe how we look at things from a different perspective. But I think that's exactly right. And you can't expect, we've been doing this for several years, and obviously have a lot of training. So it's easy to send an email to another lawyer about something that came up like a most favored nations clause or something like that. Everyone understands what it means, and then and you try and think about it. It's like, okay, what exactly does that mean? And you end up writing a several bullet point email to try and explain it. But that sort of thing comes up. But it's understandable though.
I mean, I guess that's what they said, or at least someone told me in law school, is the best way to study for a test is to explain it to your mom.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I always used to do that. If I had, explaining it to a friend or someone that didn't understand an issue, that's being able to teach it, right? That's what they say. If you can teach it to someone else, it. And I think, during law school, that was, I remember really, I think probably finally understanding that. I think you can get through undergrad a little bit, maybe from a memorization standpoint, but then once you get to law school, it became and now in the practically and practicing it in the actual field, really needing to know it and understand it from a ground up is super important.
Yeah, I do think I'd probably be much better at law school if I were to go back now than when I was
I think we all would.
there.
Yeah, I think we all would.
Because I think, and I did take some time in between undergrad and law school, and so but I still went in with that undergrad mentality that it was like the just jam it all in memorization type mentality, that it doesn't work. And it took me some time to figure out how that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I thought I would have had it figured out by then because I had that time away, but I didn't.
It's tough. I think it definitely takes, I don't know, a test or two or an outline or two to figure that out. But I can remember, some of those exams were like a multiple choice securities regulation exam that was not fun. No one really enjoyed multiple choice in law school, but just really having to know what you're doing was you're right. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but I think after a test or two, hopefully you at least figure it out or you get reality checked into it. So
yeah. So if you could go back now and change anything, in your path, would there be anything you'd change, or you stay on the course that you're on?
I think maybe playing basketball for an extra year or two might have been fun.
Blame you for that.
Yeah. But I think I'm not normally one for someone that sort of looks back and maybe second guesses myself. I'm pretty confident in where I am and who I am and what got me here, which is good. So there's not really too much I don't think I would change looking back. I think obviously learning from past experiences and growing and improving is super important, and I try and do that every day. But from a changing anything, I think no. I ended up here after a few years to find my way working for a team, and like I said, confident in who I am and what got me here. So it's good.
Yeah, I would say I think you're in a good spot. I would agree, though, maybe another year or two of basketball.
I know it would have been. Yeah, no, it would have been too bad, but it's tough. I mean, when I think about there's how many major leagues there are here in America, at least maybe 4 or 5 depending on which ones you count. At least 4 major leagues, and then 30 teams in a league, and then how many legal departments are there? And I'm able to find myself working with 2 professional sports teams right now, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here, and so happy to have it, and happy to see happy that I got here. So
yeah. And so what advice would you give to like someone, I don't want to say follow your footsteps, but, break into your field? Because as we talked about, it's not easy to get in.
I think like we talked about a little bit, it's really important to start networking and forming relationships at an early age. I've seen people get jobs, purely from a text thread about people that are, posting. And so you have to make sure you're exposed to the right opportunities and the right people, so you can really get those other opportunities that are out there. So I think trying to network is really important. And then, the most tangible way I can tell people to do that is, from a sports perspective at least, is to, join the Sports Lawyers Association is a great first step as a young lawyer, to try and get exposed to it, because it is really hard to get into. The other thing I also, tell people as well is that there's no sort of one path, right? So there's the path that I took, where I went to law school and then I practiced at a firm and tried to get some really good experience before transitioning, which is what some people do. Other people might try and work for a team right away. So there's a couple of ways you can get in there, but it is challenging, and I think networking and trying to build your network from a young lawyer is one of the best things you can do, to try and to actually try and find yourself there, hopefully one day.
I agree. And I say this a lot to people is and not being bashful about reaching out to your network. I mean, the worst someone's going to say is no,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I think it's very, and I had a hard time doing this too. It's very hard to reach out to someone you don't know and ask for help or
I
advice.
I think, yeah, I think especially too, I mean, through your alumni networks is I know I speak to students pretty often that reach out through either, a professor or through another connection. And so yeah, I wouldn't say don't be hesitant. People are always happy to share their story and try and help. I know I am, especially for people that from American, where I went to law school to try and help build, more people. I would like to see more people in this industry from school and try and help build the department there as well. So it's I think always reach out. And starting a nice sort of easy starting point is if you're fortunate enough to have people from your industry, from your school that are in your industry, that can always be a great starting point.
Yeah, I know. Like when I graduated law school, like the firm I had summered for, um, decided they couldn't take on summer associates. They couldn't hire their summer associates. So I was like, great.
Yeah,
Now what?
I've heard that story a couple of times. Yeah,
Yeah. So now what? Okay, now I need to like start applying. And then I happened to graduate in 2007 when the economy completely collapsed. So I was like, great.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I went through like as every law firm I could find in the Philadelphia area, and I just try to find people who went to my undergrad, and I would just send them an email
Yeah,
and ask for help, and just ask for like help with my resume and coffee,
yeah,
and like that, just doing that, at least I landed some. Then they were like, oh, well, my friend at so and so firm is hiring. So they would send my resume to their friend versus me just sending my resume blindly to that person, which at least got me an interview. Because if you
yeah.
just send it
That's right.
blindly, chances it's who knows.
Yeah, I
Um,
think in sports too is like I'm not sure. I heard one story recently about someone sort of getting something via cold call nearly, but I don't. It does not happen often in the sports world. And it's tough in general. Does it happen? But especially in the sports and entertainment
yeah.
industry, does someone get something from a straight cold call response? It's challenging to do it that way. So you're most likely going to need to know someone to be able to get your foot in the door. And then once you get that opportunity, you got to kind of roll with it and take it from there. But yeah, I think that's right.
Since you've been in-house now, how many years? Four?
About two. So I was
Oh,
at firm for 4, and then
four.
now about coming 2 years in house. Yeah,
Okay.
about.
So in your 2 years, you came and you had a really great background at Decker, really awesome, really good firm, really strong firm, but you still come in green, right? So you had to have had some embarrassing moments during that time. Is there anything that you could share that you're like, it was one of those times like, oh
I
my God, I can't believe they hired me. I just
No,
made a
no, I
mess.
can tell. I can tell a pretty good story. So what they do on the Devil side, at least where I was initially based, is to have you up there in Newark, and we have I think it was Fridays at the time. There's a meeting with everyone. And that morning, there's a group of guys who used to play pickup basketball in the morning, which the CEO used to come in. Scott used to give us a good run, and Jake, the president, still would come as well. So we've just been playing in the morning, and then we get up to the I think it's my second week or something when I'm there. Um, there's a standing meeting which is around the Devils logo. No one in my department. What they do is they call up the new people and you just kind of give a little introduction and talk about yourself. But no one in my group kind of gave me the heads up. You're probably not supposed to walk right across the logo, which I probably should have known. So in front of the entire company, I proceeded to do that, and then get yelled at as I had to walk backwards across it, and then had to kind of show a talent, and ended up trying to juggle some coins out there in front of every single management, every executive in the company. So that was a great starting point. So if I didn't, if I'm still here after that, it's good. But no, I think that there's been a bunch of other times, just like I said, getting used to the company and trying to just get a feel for what people do. I mean, I've asked a lot of stupid questions in my time there, but probably necessary ones in order to learn and have an understanding of what exactly goes into, putting, like I said, like putting a game on, and what kind of signage that is and everything, which a lot of people for that is, their bread and butter. So I think there's a lot of questions I probably asked that are necessary, but at the time, I'm sure it's a tough transition process to a new industry. So.
Yeah, but maybe someone should have given you a heads up about that.
Oh yeah. I think my
Like the
yeah
new guy.
my supervisor was like, I should have told you. I didn't tell you about that. I was like, no, you didn't tell me about that. Just there's two presidents there and the CEO and everyone, and it's about 60. I don't know how many people it was, but it was no, it was great. The company is great. Everyone. One thing about working in sports too is that there's probably a certain type of person that has this that wants to be in that industry, and it's tough to not even in legal department. It's tough to get into it at certain other parts. So people are passionate about what they do. People are energetic. People are excited about what they do at HBSC. So it's great to be able to come to work each day with those people. And yeah, to be honest, working with the people in the legal department, they're all people I enjoy talking to all the time. So it's great coming there and being around a group of people that is really supportive like that. So.
Now, are some of your colleagues, are they from similar backgrounds in the sense that they also played, sports on a collegiate or professional level, or is it split?
Yeah, so I think actually a lot of the people are interested. You may probably have a passion about sports. I think in the legal department we're made up of mostly people that come from a firm, previously a little bit of time at a firm, or one about Christine, one of the great people on our team. She's been doing working around operations and arenas for a long time as well, but she has a very different background early on in her career. So Brad, the GC, was at Proskauer for a number of years. Dave was at Proskauer. We've got someone from the Warriors who was at a firm who came over, and so like I said, someone from the DA's office. So it's a really good mix of people that we have in the group. I think we try and do a job of finding the right people. And Brad and Christine and the people at the top do a great job trying to hire people. But I think mainly it's people that are either have an interest in, you've got to have an interest in the sports
Sure.
and entertainment. Otherwise, it doesn't sort of make sense to make the jump, especially from the big law sort of lifestyle. And so I think you'll find people, whether they played at some point, whether they played or maybe they're now coaching their kids or something like that. There's people that are passionate about sports and or entertainment at some level. And so I think that's probably what the commonality is amongst us, is that we're excited about being there. And like you said at the beginning, Megan, we're all still lawyers, but you get a kick out of having your office be in the Prudential Center and walking through the arena, or you get a kick out of going to the game early and be able to watch warm-ups from courtside. There's certain things like that people in our company also will all get a kick out of, all appreciate, all really like to be a part of. So I think that's sort of the commonality amongst us there.
But really what I'm getting is when you're playing that pickup game, do you have to hold it back a little bit if you're playing with like some higher ups that maybe
we didn't last year, but we call it the Turnpike Throwdown, which is like a company-wide basketball tournament that we put on. And so I still remember it was my first year. So if there's a tie, it's basically a tournament that just put into teams. There's like all throughout the company, everyone's in teams. If there's a tie at the end of the game, it goes to free throw shooting. I was doing a free throw shootout against the CEO Scott, the previous CEO Scott at the time, and I beat him and knocked him out. But then the next game I had a shootout against Jake, the president of the Devils, and he beat me. But I like to say that it probably wouldn't have been the best look for me to knock both the CEO and the president out in one go. But no, it's great. There's a lot of people there that are former athletes, like you said, in some way, and the pickup games can be good and can get competitive, and definitely a bit of talking back and forth. So it's it's for sure. There's a lot of people that either passionate about it or played it.
Yeah, and then you still get some extra basketball time.
Yeah. There's still I love playing pickup still. It's been a little bit now during COVID, but it's great to be able to have that as part of the as people at the company that like to do something like that. So it's another perk of being in a sports industry. So
yeah, and I can imagine, and I guess this is just an outside perception, that the overall culture is a positive one. I think when you're in the entertainment industry and your job is to, whether it be put on a concert or a professional sporting event, is to entertain people. I think you tend to build a team of people who are pleasers and like to work to make other people
No,
happy. So you
no,
kind of
yeah,
work together.
you're right. I think like the culture is super important, and I know it's something that at HBSC we really value and drive and put a lot of effort into building that culture and the energy, the kind of energy that people have that work there, and it is definitely a very positive, energetic place to be, and everyone there has that sort of similar attitude, and I think not to say that working at somewhere at a firm isn't great, but it's definitely a little different when you have maybe there's a whole floor of ticket sellers right below you that are celebrating a sales goal, and there's a lot of cheering and jumping around and stuff like that. So there's different aspects of it, but yeah, it's a great a great culture, and everyone is always positive and energetic, and you build a team of people like that. It's a collaborative. People there want to be part of a team, want to play their role, and be collaborative. So.
Yeah. And I think that is a big step away from firm culture, because in some respect, firm culture can be very competitive. I mean, you go into law school is competitive by its very nature. And then, especially if you're in big law, like you were, it's competitive. I mean, I didn't work in big law, but I had a lot of friends who did, and my understanding, you are fighting a lot of times to get better assignments or bill more, or
I've
stand
heard
out.
I've heard the story. I've heard stories about other firms that will not be named about what can go on there. But for Deckard, I think I was lucky at Deckard in the DC office, at least there with who I worked with. We were a really good group of people, but it definitely is different in the sense of I mean, the billable hour, bonus isn't hanging over your head all the time throughout the year, and the constant grind to meet. I mean, we meet deadlines, but the 2 a.m. emails can be, can be a bit rough from time to time when you're on the firm side, and really, it's kind of a deliver no matter what approach there. Which, not to say that we don't have the same approach here internally. I know that we see ourselves as our own little law firm that provides us a service to the entire company, and it's a grind on this end too sometimes as well, but definitely the culture is definitely different. From the firm, just the general atmosphere over there. It's what we and how we work over here. And yeah, getting tickets to games and stuff like that doesn't hurt as well. So
no, I'm sure you probably get good tickets too, not nosebleed tickets.
We do all right. The last Sixers game I was at was unfortunately the game 7 when we got knocked out, but was there with by the GC Brad and Dave as well. So it's a nice perk for sure.
And did you develop becoming a fan of your teams, or were you previously a Devils or Sixers fan, or do you just kind of have to be now?
No, I want to be. No, so I'm definitely a big Devils fan and a big Sixers fan. I was being in the DC area, kind of was always a bit of the Wizards, but no, yeah, it's now, like I said, as soon as I got NHL TV so I could watch the Devs, got the NBA League Pass to watch the Sixers, and so now it's great. I think you even have more appreciation, like we were saying earlier, when you see what goes into putting a game on, going there, and but yeah, now we're definitely fans of the team, and when you're more connected to it as well, when you hear you hear stuff going on, and can be a part of certain conversations, and it's just interesting to see how things are getting thought about internally. And so you kind of, the more connection you have to something, obviously the more interested you are.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a case for me now. When I wasn't doing a lot of hockey following before, but now I'm watching there and watching a lot of Devils games, and really over the last 2 years I've watched a lot more than I watched before. So it's and always watching a lot of basketball games and getting to go to games too, and getting that experience is awesome.
I mean, I live in a hockey. My husband played hockey, so it's hockey here all the time.
Okay.
I used to joke. I mean, it would be like, I don't know, the middle of the summer, and he'd wake up in the middle of the night to watch some, international junior championship. Or something.
He's really into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really into it. No, but just like you said, you have like we were saying, everyone at the company sort of is interested in it as well. So we have our own finance team that they're there watching hockey games too. So it's everyone kind of gets into it. But you always we have a team doing well as well. It's awesome. And like we had the Sixers this year, we had wish we had gone longer, but had a good playoff run for a little bit is super exciting for the entire company to be a part of.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wouldn't want to jump off without mentioning this. So, sports is so cyclical, there's in season, off season, but right now you're in the off season for both your school. I guess, well, hockey
Yeah,
starts soonish,
yeah,
but like not
both
yet.
off seasons right now. Yeah.
So is the off season like, is it a little calmer or is it a big push because you have to get all this stuff done before the
Yeah,
season
no, that's a
starts?
good question for sure. So it's kind of funny. I think it's nearly our busier time. So right now, during COVID, there's a little bit of there was a lull when it comes to, I think the uncertainty for everyone in every industry created a little bit of hesitancy maybe around, spending dollars. But as we're getting back and the leagues are coming back and games are coming back, this summer has been really active with a lot of deals coming in, and some big deals as well that we're excited about. So I think the off season is nearly busier because we have everyone gearing up for everything in the season, whether it's new vendors they want, new features they want, new marketing tools they want. There's all those kind of contracts that need to come through us and we need to look at. So in addition to, like I said, all those sponsorship agreements we're doing, which are super important, some software or system that the ticket sellers need to be able to make sure they can do the best they can do reaching out to fans is just as important as well. So we right now is like everyone is gearing up, ready to go. So the cycle kind of it ebbs and flows, but now it's definitely flowing for sure as we get into the seasons when it comes to people trying to get their deals done. And then once the season comes along, it's a little bit of different busy where things pop up here and there, but they want to do, but things start flowing and going. But right now, everyone's trying to get geared up, so it's definitely busy.
Yeah, I that's what I kind of anticipated, was that maybe you didn't have the most relaxing summer.
Yeah, it's I think it's at the beginning of the summer, people like to maybe try and get into that summer slang. But for us, just because we're a part of every part of the company, we're going to see some department, like one or two departments might be slower, but another one might be busy. And if they're busy, we're working. So it all kind of connects back to us in a way. And so yeah, it's been the off season is the time to try and really get prepared for the next season for our department and for the rest of the company. So it definitely can be busy. Yeah.
So I usually ask this question as my last question of all my guests, or most of my guests, about a movie that they'd watch. What movie can you watch over and over? However, I feel like for you, it's more appropriate. There's got to I think big sports fans always have that one clip that, that famous sports clip that they can watch, sit down and watch anytime that's on. Is there anything that stands out to you? It's like your favorite clip that you will watch regardless?
I think the one that probably, unfortunately in one way stands out recently is the Kobe clips. I've seen Kobe's last game is something that I've seen more than once, watched the highlights of more than one time. That was, for the whole sports world, was tough for everyone. But those clips of him in his last game when he put up, I think, 60 in the, at Staples Center in front of that crowd in his last game is something that I can watch all over again. And the way it went too, when it was a bit of a slow start, and he really came back at the end and put it together. But that's one that stands out for sure. And then there's probably a few others, but that's the first one that comes to top of mind, especially recently. And then I see here and there, because those, it's just amazing. It's amazing. I mean, what a way to go out. It's insane.
Yeah, I remember that as well. It was, he was definitely, a goat.
Yeah, no, it was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those. You kind of remember watching it and where you are, and I still remember following it and maybe flipping back and forth because it wasn't, maybe it wasn't going so well, and then at the end, he's got 60, and it's, it's crazy. But that's the first one that jumps to the top of mind for sure. That was crazy. What a game.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks so much for sharing. And it also reminds me just of like it's so reminiscent of Michael Jordan and in his championship games, how he could just like turn it on and turn the whole game around too.
Yeah, no, there's all those guys. I think all those. Now we're seeing more and more documentaries coming out too, getting behind the scenes. And obviously I love being able to see how all that works. But I really get a kick out of those for sure too. So it's great.
Well, Sam, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time and giving us like a look behind, the sports curtain, even though you can't give us all, the details, but I loved hearing a little bit about what you do and getting like an inside look. So thanks so much for sharing that with us.
No worries at all. I mean, thanks so much for having me on. I always, like to talk about what we do and hopefully give others a little bit of that insight that, I really was looking for when I was, trying to think about what it was like to be in the sports and entertainment industry. So, happy, thanks for having me. And, it was great. I appreciate it.
And just let any listeners who are in law school or have any questions about getting into the industry, why don't you give them your info and they can, if they want to reach out to you and get, some
Yeah.
healthy advice.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my email is just my name, Sam Burum at hpsc.com, SAMBURUM at hpsc.com. I'm always happy to answer questions and reach out, obviously on LinkedIn as well too, and other platforms as well. So always happy to reach out and talk to anyone that's interested. More people in this industry, and the better, I think. So that's great.
Well, thanks so much. And for our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Defense of Arrests at Apple Podcasts.